Hello, my name's Olurotimi Osha. I like talking about American presidents and US history and everything in between. Today, I want to discuss corruption in the United States federal government. The sort of corruption our founding fathers, like Thomas Jefferson, feared uh, a the creation of a strong central government would engender. On May 19, 2026, just a few days ago, the FBI raided the home of, they executed a search warrant and found uh, about 303 1 kilogram gold bars in the home of CIA official. He was a senior executive in the CIA, David J. Rush. The 303 gold bars were valued at over $40 million. In addition to that, they also found about $2 million in cash, in currency. They found over at least 35 luxury wristwatches, mostly Rolexes, right? A Rolex, uh, costs between $10,000 and $60,000, right? So you can imagine. So another, uh, uh, over millions of dollars again. So all in the home of a public official, right? It was a CIA public official. Now, the reason that ostensibly prompted the FBI search warrant was because he failed. There had been an internal CIA audit, right? So, hey, I was an auditor in the Department of the Navy, right? In a classified area, but that's neither here nor there. So there was a CIA internal audit, and uh, they discovered that he had lied regarding his credentials. So this guy who became a senior executive, member of the senior executive service. So the senior executives, I've done a video explaining how they're the highest people in the federal government. So meaning this guy was one of the leaders of the CIA. So senior executives are mapped as equivalent of generals in the U.S. Army. They're the highest people, most prestigious, most qualified, right? They're normally people who are senior executives are normally exceptionally qualified. So, as a John S. McCain Strategic Fellow, I was on that track. I was picked to become one of the future leaders of the DoD, to be on a senior executive track. So the senior executives were my boss, the person I reported to, were my mentor. So those are the highest levels of the U.S. federal government. Um, so this guy, um, this guy was a senior executive, but it turned out that this guy did not. That's David J. Rush, did not have any of the qualifications he claimed on his resume and in his background. He claimed to have graduated from Clemson University, had a bachelor's in mathematics and information systems. That was false. He never even got a degree from Clemson University. He claimed to have a master's in electrical engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic. That was false. He never had that. He claimed have uh, to have graduated from Naval Test Pilot School, had a certification. That was false. He claimed to have been a captain, a high-ranking captain in the U.S. Navy. That was false. Everything he everything was a fabrication. But this guy made it through rigorous vetting for 2 decades. I don't know how he did it for 2 decades. Apart from that, he had been a Navy, but he was a technician, right? Low level information system technician in the Navy. Low level, he had been discharged in the Naval Reserve, and he also committed fraud, taking about $77,000 worth of military leave. Right, he committed fraud regarding that. So. Um, this guy could not have been doing these things alone, right? I hold a top, so he holds a top secret TSSCI, right? That's the highest level of national security clearance given to an American citizen in the government. I hold a top secret TSSCI. Those things are very rigorous, and I got it through a program created by Congress, right? So it's an extremely rigorous vetting process, right? If you're in the federal government, especially these areas like, he's in intelligence, even more rigorous. Like working in the U.S. federal government, at least in the Pentagon. I worked in the Pentagon. I've worked in the Pentagon. Worked in the couple of military bases. I don't have to mention them, including Washington Navy. I can't mention the others. As this vetting, they vet everything, right? They check every. So it's the government is a bit inefficient because it's vetting everything, right? It's vetting everything. So I don't know how this guy made it through for 2 decades, passed all these rigorous vetting processes, and became a senior executive in the CIA. That's our most powerful intelligence outfit. We have about 18 intelligence agencies, by the way, in the US. Many people don't know that, but the CIA, everybody knows the CIA. It's the most powerful, it's the most elite, most prestigious, most powerful, right? Because they're prepared for infiltrators, right? They assume almost everybody is they're suspicious of everybody because there was a time the KGB infiltrated them, right? So the KGB foreign agents, they're trying to infiltrate them. The Mossad, different people, they're trying agencies, foreign intelligence, they're normally trying to infiltrate them. So they're vetting everything. They're suspicious of everybody, right? That gets in there. They're always at every one time. You have somebody, one of your they're watching you, they're surveilling you. They can randomly, and you never know, right? So uh, this guy could only pass all that vetting because there's an inside racket. So there's something going on in there, or they could, you know, they have may have been, um, they may have staged all this to flush him out, to flush something else all this while. I don't know, but the U.S. intelligence. Look, the U.S. government, the federal government, will find and see anything it wants to see. That's how rigorous, advanced the U.S. Um, and capable U.S. surveillance, whatever vetting process is. So there's a racket in there. There's a racket eh, going on in there. It's interesting that there was somebody that I was in contact with who was a senior executive in the HR of the CIA, and who was trying to help me resolve my matter, right? Dr. Mary C. Byers. This is in the public domain. It's in the public domain. She was a principal human resources executive when David J. Rush got into the CIA. So it's kind of interesting. And she's on the panel, right? She was on the panel at the time because to become a senior executive, right, there's a panel that reviews you, right? And they're vetting, they're going through a process, your qualifications and everything. She was on the panel, right? It's on her resume. Her public information is out there. It's interesting, though, that in May, she left her job as the Director of Human Resource Capital in the Office of the Undersecretary of Intelligence for of Intelligence at the Pentagon. That's a place that offered me a job that I was supposed to work in. That was before she got there, and I understand I'm being blocked from getting in. So there's something funny going on, but in any event, because I had an offer to work in that place, right? So hey, but it's sad because so it's situations like this sort of public corruption, right? A cabal that's corrupt through the bureaucracy. This is what our founding fathers were against. So many of our founding fathers, I've done videos talking about how the anti-federalists were against the creation of a strong central government with the Constitution of 1787 gave us. And people like Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay argued. They, of course, wrote the Federalist Papers, arguing for a strong federal federal government, central government, people who were anti-federalists, who were against the creation of a strong federal government, people like Thomas Jefferson, George Mason, George Clinton. George Mason had been governor of Virginia, I think. He's the one who first proposed he was the first author of the Bill of Rights of Virginia, Virginia Bill of Rights, which James Madison also copied, right? He incorporated a lot of it into um, our national bill, our federal Bill of Rights of the U.S. Constitution, right? Again, the Bill of Rights, those are the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, right? Which safeguard liberties, rights of the individuals and the states against federal government overreach, right? Um, George Clinton was governor of New York. He would later become a vice president to James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, and of course, he died in office. One of James Madison's uh, um, vice president. He was writing anonymously as Cato, and then of course Patrick Henry, the famous Patrick Henry of Virginia, who said, "Give me liberty or give me death." Right. Uh, so these all believed that a strong national government who that could had the power to tax, right, raise a lot of money, tax the people, right, and create laws that could override the state laws would eventually create, breed a cabal of corrupt political elites that centralized wealth. It would centralize wealth and power, right? This was, they feared, like Thomas Jefferson, they didn't even want a strong military, central standing army, apart from Thomas Jefferson, who feared that if someone, a demagogue, someone who, you know, could become a dictator and have the control of the army and oppress the people. He feared that such a strong central government would create an elective despotism. That's what he called it, an elective despotism that bought the voices of the people. It purchased the voices of the people, and it was able to corrupt the machinery of government. When he was talking about the machinery of government, that's the bureaucracy. So he didn't want a strong bureaucracy. So at the beginning of our government, at the beginning of our nation, we didn't have a large bureaucracy, right? We didn't have a large bureaucracy, even long after the creation um, of the strong central government with the 1787 Constitution. It took a long time. Of course, the large bureaucracy that we have today, and which is gotten too large, and I mean we're a strong nation, so it makes sense. But the sort of corruption that Thomas Jefferson feared, we see it has, it's been engendered, right? It's been engendered, and the case of David Rush instantiates this, right? Um, and he's not the only one, so you can't do anything in the government alone in isolation. You can't, right? So you've got to have other people that are helping you at that stage, especially the CIA. At that stage, he got through, he slipped through the cracks. If he slipped through the cracks, there are many others who slipped through the cracks, and then there were people who helped him. So there's a racket in there that's facilitating this, and so you're going to see. I guess there are going to be purges. There's going to be something going on. There are going to be purges, right? Um, Unless it's some kind of smoke screen that they isolated him, identified him as some kind of mole a long time ago. But nah, if he were a mole, he wouldn't be stupid enough to be doing that to amass all of that $40 million in if he were no, he just slipped through the cracks, and there are other people in there that help him. I know, because I know the human resources. I've been talking about it. The human resources at the Department of the Navy, they are corrupt. I name one person, Kendra Tees. They routinely commit perjury and fraud. Kendra Tees is one of them. They routinely a guy I worked with. His name is Nathan R. Brown. And he's in the office of Inspector General right now, right? He's moved to the office of Inspector General. This guy was under investigation for conspiracy to offend the United States and defraud the United States government. He committed perjury. By the way, the charges that they've already leveled against David J. Rush include violation of 18 USC Section 1001. That's falsification of falsifying government records, right? Lack of candor, falsification of government records. It's a crime, right? You make false statements in the federal government, falsify record. That's a crime. This is something that they do routinely in Navy's human resources, Navy HR. I experienced this. Kindred tease her cabal. I have a Juris Doctor degree and right an MBA. For my high, I put it down that my highest level of education, JD, I gave them all the credentials. They had it right in the screening process, but then they went to go and falsify my records. They downgraded my records, right? So they downgraded my credentials, my qualifications, saying my highest level of education was a master's degree, Master of Business Administration degree, when I have a doctoral level degree, doctorate. A Juris Doctor is a doctorate degree, right? A JD, that's why I say it's doctor, right? It's not a PhD, but it's a doctor. The Department of Education views it as equivalent to a PhD, right? Level for I was offered the minimum position I was given was a GS11 at the Navy. She changed it. I was offered a GS11, I accepted it. The process is there, and then they intentionally falsified my records, downgraded it, and switched my offer to a GS9. And when I petitioned, right, went through the EOC and process to ask them to correct it because the actually hiring manager offered me a GS11. He said, no, I'm qualified. There's a black guy. But Kendra teases a white woman. The white woman, another with a black woman who wanted to falsify and downgrade my qualifications, including the Auditor General of the Navy, Don Jed Gilmore, who was pretending to mentor me. She didn't know that I understood what it was she was really doing, right? So they have this racket, this corrupt cabal. That's how they get through. Sometimes they're sleeping with some of these people because maybe it was somebody he was sleeping with, and that's how he was able to pass through. That's the David J. Rush thing. But they'll figure it out. They'll flush all of them out. But there's going to be a cover up probably. They're going to try and cover it up because one of the things about working in the federal government, they don't want you to see. They don't want the public, especially Congress, the public, right? Because we're public servants. It's government of the people. This is not private sector. So they're going to try. They don't want the government, the public to know the government is not working. It's not working for the people. They don't want people to know that. So they always end up covering things up, even though just fixing the problem is a way to make to fixing the problem, exposing it, being transparent is a way to actually sanitize our government and let our people, let the American people know, have confidence in the government because that's what we are. Our government, we're government of the people, by the people, for the people, right? That's the ideal, the reason for being, the justification and rationale for the public service, right? But now, just the things that the founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson feared is that this large bureaucracy has gone off to become an animal, a beast of its own, right? That's more focused on it existing, on it serving its own interest instead of the interest of the nation and the American people. And you can see why David Rush had $40 million in gold bars. He had, a public servant, had over 35 wristwatches. I was working with someone who told me she had 300 shoes at a low level, GS13. Why? How is it a public servant? You have 300 shoes. As an auditor, when I learned auditing in school and as a banker, they taught us about our lifestyle. There's a lifestyle of people that they want in certain professions. Not that you don't have the money to afford it, but if you want it, if you want ostentation, luxuries, if you want to show that exuberance, right, then you're not fit for that, for the position of auditor or banker because it's you know, they're constantly looking at you. They have to be monitoring you to know if you are stealing money, misappropriating funds, and things like that. In certain professions, like in banking, they let you know as an auditor if you're in classified, if you're working in the federal government. Now, when you have 300 shoes, right? So you don't have the personality for it. It's up to you to do whatever you want to. But if you feel that need to buy 300 pairs of shoes, right? And you're a low level person, she wasn't high, this is GS13, and you have 300 pairs of shoes. You're not rich. You don't come from a rich, she doesn't come from a rich home, and she's doing that. It says something, because an auditor will think, okay, you're stealing money from somewhere if somebody doesn't catch it. These are the things that you know. And this person was an auditor. This was the sort of thing it should have known. It trained you if you went through a school and you took auditing. I have how many auditing courses? At least three auditing courses, right, from school, right? um is it three, two, and and all the, of course, I've had all the professional whatever, right? And in banking as well, those are things that they teach you. The other thing, if you're in certain professions in banking, they don't want you to be friends, to be close to each other, because you're going to collude, right? They don't want you to be hanging out together. Like if you're a banker, for instance, when I was a banker, you have the codes, secret codes. Each person has one code because nobody, they don't give those. That's part of internal controls, checks and balances. No one person has the codes. We don't trust anybody enough to have one, and we don't want to tempt you. Even if you're, of course, anybody, we're supposed to have integrity and be trustworthy, but we don't want to tempt you. And it's also a proper internal control, risk control, safeguard, guardrail, that you don't give all the codes to one person, right? So each person has a portion of a code. And we don't want you people to go home and fraternize and drink together, and then one day you're going to give each other one part, each part of the code. One person is going to have it, or they're going to accidentally give it to somebody, or write it down somewhere, and somebody's going to see it. And one day somebody's going to break in and steal all the money in the vault. You understand? So that's part of like working in the federal government in the classified area, right? So the same thing, all these walls, all these walls, all these walls, these barriers, all these, so it's a siloed environment, right? And so they don't want collusion, right? Unfortunately, there was all clearly collusion that allowed David J. Rush to get away with falsifying his credentials, misrepresenting his qualifications for 20 years, and he even made it all the way to be a senior executive in the CIA. Of course, I'm so disappointed. And yeah, apart from that, the money, right? The money, $40 million in gold bars in his home, $2 million in cash, 35 luxury wristwatches, mostly Rolexes, right? So that's it's just crazy. Um, yeah. So yeah, as I was saying, it's a sort of corruption the founding fathers wanted to prevent, because they thought the power to of the government um, to collect taxes would just engender this large bureaucracy. Our large bureaucracy didn't come about until the time of Franklin D. Roosevelt, after the Great Depression. Yes, the large bureaucracy helped alleviate the Great Depression because it gave the large federal government, large bureaucracy, gave people jobs, right? And but unfortunately today it's become, instead of having people more qualified, especially since we're now the number one most technologically advanced nation, thanks to our private sector. Our private sector is phenomenal, right? Unfortunately, some people have made the large bureaucracy, instead of it being the government, the apparatus of the most powerful, uh, the city that's a shining, the nation that's a shining city on a hill, that others want to emulate. It's sort of become like a welfare trough, right? It's like a welfare trough right now, and a concatenation of incompetence, right? This is what I found in the Department of the Navy, in the Naval Audit Service, right? which is ironic because auditors are the ones who are supposed to, they're working like management consultants, the way they're set up in the federal government, in the Navy. They're supposed to be experts that are telling the leaders of the Navy how to, because we're civilians, right? I'm not a part of them right now anymore, but they're supposed to be telling the leaders of the Navy, they're supposed to have all this expertise telling them how to make the Navy, the operations better, more effective, and everything to avoid risk, eliminate fraud. But it turns out they're a basket of incompetence, right? I know I was there, and they are a cabal perpetrating fraud, right? I've been a victim of their fraud. They routinely commit perjury, and it's unfortunate. It looks like it's not limited to the Naval Audit Service, to the where I was working, but we can see it uh, from the uh, from the atrocity perpetrated by David J. Rush in the CIA, who, without any qualifications, but after falsifying his qualifications, he was able to make it all the way to a member of the elite senior executive service, who are the leaders of the U.S. federal government. So he was actually became one of the leaders of the CIA without credentials. He also lying his way through. How did he do it? My name is Olurotimi Osha, and I will keep you posted. Thank you.